They believe in God the Father, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Spirit. While you might find some subtle differences while going between certain sub-religions in Christianity, they all believe heavily in the Bible. So let's take a look at the Bible then. The Old Testament of the Bible was originally written between 1200 and 165 BC. The New Testament was written between 0 and 100 AD. And for those who may not be aware of what BC and AD mean, the current year is 2020 AD, so we're living somewhere between 2,000 to 3,000 years after the Bible was written. But to be clear, by all historian accounts, the Bible which was written thousands of years ago is not the same Bible which you can purchase at your local bookstore nowadays, seeing that the Bible is still the most commonly sold book in the world. Somewhere between 1946 and 1952 AD, the original Bible was translated to English by the Division of Christian Education of the National Council of Churches. They called this translated version of the Bible the Revised Standard Version. By the way, the key word in that name is revised. But this version is more commonly known as the RSV Bible. And this RSV Bible is the one which Christian faith communities read from every weekend during their church services and believe in wholeheartedly. During the 1940s and 1950s, homophobia was on the rise worldwide. LGBTQ individuals and groups were finally making some progress in gaining equality. In fact, in 1946, the Center for Culture and Recreation was founded in the Netherlands, and it was the first known LGBTQ organization in the world. In 1948, Denmark quickly followed suit, and in 1951, Greece decriminalized homosexuality. And these are just some of the equality milestones during the same years that the Bible was being translated by the Christian churches. In other words, LGBTQ people were finally making headway, and this was not making homophobic people happy. Thus, I'll let you decide for yourself if this next part was purely a coincidence. Now, back in the original text of the Old and the New Testament, the only time the Bible even merely mentioned sexual actions between two men was a section of text referring to pedophilia. It mentioned an older man was not to lay with a much, much younger boy. When the National Council of Churches translated this text, they did not translate it word for word. They also added in extra words never seen in the original version of the text. In other words, this was their own interpretation of the text. To say that a man lying with another man, regardless of age, was now a sin in the eyes of the church. And they added these words everywhere through the text of the entire Bible, making it seem as if homosexuality was a sin in many verses of the Bible, which it wasn't ever before. Why this change was made is beyond our current knowledge, even by historian research. But even if someone believes heavily in the Bible being the Word of God, the original Word of God never once mentioned anything about homosexuality, or two consenting adult men in a relationship being any form of sodomy. It only ever mentioned pedophilia, which is why many homophobes accuse gay people of automatically being pedophiles, and why our community is accused of such horrible accusations so regularly. It's all because the men whose job it was to translate decided to add in extra words to the original text. And now in the RSV Bible, pedophilia is right alongside homosexuality in the new version of the Bible. So if you consider yourself a Christian, then homosexuality is not a sin in your religion. And if you believe it is a sin, then you are not following the original text of the Bible in order to subscribe to that belief. Legally speaking, you cannot force anyone else to subscribe to your faith, and you cannot pass laws which force that false belief on others. And even spiritually speaking, in the 1st of John 3:15, it mentions, quote, "Everyone who hates his brother is a murderer, and you know that no murderer has eternal life abiding in him." In other words, hatred towards LGBTQ is a sin, as compared to being gay, which is not a sin in Christianity. So for the love of God, stop saying it's a sin.
Is it a sin for a Christian to be attracted to the same gender? Well, I've had a lot of time to think about that, and I have 3 things I want you to consider. I've never met anyone who actually chose what they're attracted to. I certainly didn't choose what I was attracted to. It's just something I kind of discovered around the age of 12 or 13 years old. Attractions are very automatic and involuntary. I believe there are hundreds of contributing influences that determine what you and I are attracted to. So it would be wrong for you to assume that people chose to be attracted to the same sex. It's just not the case. Look, we're all attracted to different things. We have different leanings from one degree to another. Welcome to humanity. An attraction left on its own is not good or bad. It's neutral in nature. It's what we do with the attractions that determine whether something becomes good or bad, right or sinful. Okay, so just bear with me for a second. Just consider this example. Let's say every day you had this burning desire to just punch someone in the face. Well, if that was your challenge, I could understand that would be pretty difficult to live with. But it's not a sin to have the desire to want to punch people in the face. It might be, actually. Okay, you might have some anger issues and you might go get some counseling, but if you punch me in the face, we have a problem. So, is being attracted to the same sex a sin? No, the attraction isn't the problem, it's the action. You know, over the years, I've seen a lot of Christians feel like in order to be successful as a Christian, they have to go from being homosexually attracted to heterosexually attracted. You know, honestly, that's just not what my ministry is about. We are not about conversion therapy. I personally believe trying to change one's sexual attraction can ultimately impoverish someone's faith. I really believe that the ultimate goal we have as Christians is to strive to live holy lives. So, for the Christian, the opposite of homosexuality is not heterosexuality, it's holiness. In the Bible, in the book of Galatians chapter 2, verse 20, the Apostle Paul says, "I have been crucified with Christ, and it's no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me." As a Christian, my goal is to live for Christ. He is my identity, and the rest I leave to grace. So, is it a sin for you or your friend to be same-sex attracted? No. And if you want to know more, check out
Muslims base their faith on the Quran, which is their version of the Bible. But the Islamic faith doesn't have one central governing body, such as the Roman Catholics have the Vatican and the Pope. This means for Muslims, beliefs on LGBTQ can vary depending on which part of the world you live in. In the western part of the world, meaning North and South America, mosques are more LGBTQ friendly. In the eastern part of the world, between Europe and Asia, mosques are more homophobic. Some countries even take this to the extreme and follow other sections of the Quran to justify their murder of LGBTQ people. So if you plan to travel as an LGBTQ person, check to make sure which countries you'll be visiting, and keep away from the countries which criminalize being LGBTQ. A map of these countries can be found in the resources section in the description below. There are, however, a number of Western mosques which freely accept LGBTQ Muslims. A group called Muslims for Progressive Values has founded Unity Mosque in Atlanta, Georgia, Columbus, Ohio, and Los Angeles, California. Another group called the Muslim Alliance for Sexual and Gender Diversity even hosts a retreat for LGBTQ Muslims in the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania area every year. Now, the Quran only mentions how homosexual intercourse could at times be lustful. It never says that every homosexual act is always lustful. The reason this is important is because the Quran says that lust is a sin. But remember, not every homosexual act is lustful. And it never specifically says that a person being homosexual is a sin. So because there is no governing body in the Islamic faith, the debate on whether or not being homosexual is a sin in the Muslim community is all left up to the interpretation of the imams who lead their local mosque in prayer. Interestingly, being transgender is widely accepted in the Islamic faith in many mosques worldwide, and is actually more accepted than being homosexual. As the text reads in the Quran, lust is the only sin, and through our painstaking research, all we found evidence of is that homosexuality is technically not a sin in the Islamic faith, though I will concede that the text is up for massive interpretation. So if someone is Muslim, they may be completely correct in saying that their interpretation says that it is a sin. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Power. In Hinduism, their divine beings can take many forms, but the common spirit is called Brahman. Hindus don't believe in heaven or hell. They simply believe in a continuous rebirth process which releases the body from its limitations and frees the spirit. This is called moksha. In the Vedas, it commonly refers to some people as a third sex. This third sex is loosely defining either people who cannot have sex, do not have the desire to have sex, or for homosexual people who are attracted to those of the same sex. Members of this third sex, including homosexual people, are not ostracized from the religion. In fact, they are sometimes even considered to have divine powers or insights. So that's pretty cool. Now, while their ancient text does not specifically mention homosexuality, or heterosexuality for that matter, it does mention procreative and non-procreative sexual acts. These procreative acts must be within a marriage in order to have the Hindu blessing. As for the non-procreative acts, it includes every sexual act which is not done to procreate. In other words, all gay sexual acts, and even some straight sexual acts such as oral. But even in the ancient text, these acts are not in any way discouraged for the common man. They are only discouraged for priests. So unless you're a Hindu priest, you are allowed to love whoever you were meant to love, and you're allowed to do whatever you want to do with those of the same sex, and it is not a sin. The Hindu American Foundation notes that, quote, given their inherent spiritual equality, Hindus should not socially ostracize LGBTQ individuals, but should accept them as fellow sojourners, which are their version of parishioners, on the path to moksha. So in Hinduism, being gay is absolutely fine. Though I will note that some Hindu communities are not LGBTQ friendly, not because of their religious beliefs, but because of the attitudes imported from conquering nations. Thank you so much. In ancient Rome, men were free to engage in sexual relationships with other men. If they engaged in same-sex relationships, it wasn't going to bring down their social status, and it wasn't going to land them in jail. In fact, in many cases in ancient Rome, homosexual behavior was encouraged. But in ancient Rome, they operated on a patriarchal society. In this society, free-born men possessed political liberty, meaning they had the right to rule both themselves and their household. Virtue was a quality they defined for themselves, and there was very little judgment in the time period. These free-born men were perfectly allowed to engage in same-sex relationships and intercourse, as long as they took the dominant and penetrative role. Basically, as long as they were the top in the relationship, it was allowed.
There's a lot of misinformation out there about what it means to be transgender, but recently scientists have begun to look more closely into the neurology, physiology, and psychology behind it.
So today we're going to break down what science does know in a respectful and educational way. Hey guys, I'm Gigi Gorgeous, and today I'm here with ASAP Science to break down the science of being transgender. Before we get too deep into it, we have to look at your genetic sex, or the chromosomes you have. These were determined right at fertilization, when the sperm cell from your father, which carries an X or a Y chromosome, fused with the egg from your mother, which carries an X chromosome.
But until 6 or 7 weeks after fertilization, both XY and XX embryos have identical gonads. Around 7 weeks, the male sex organs start to develop because of a gene on the Y chromosome called SRY. It causes cells to become more specialized, and these cells create testosterone, which in turn triggers the development of structures like the penis and scrotum, while other cells block female development by degenerating the female ducts. However, in female development, because there is no Y chromosome with the SRY gene, these ducts stay intact and become the uterus, cervix, upper vagina, and the oviduct with the help of estrogen and chemicals secreted by the early kidney. But it's not always that simple. There are sometimes even rare combinations like XXY, XXX, XXYY, etc., and even people with XX chromosomes that develop male genitals and characteristics due to a piece of the Y chromosome breaking off and switching places to an X chromosome.
But sexual differentiation in the brain actually happens much later than gonadal differentiation. And yes, although controversial, male and female brains have structural and functional differences between each other. Studies have found that males generally have a larger cerebrum, cerebellum, and hippocampus, while females have higher density left frontal lobes and larger volumes in the right frontal lobes. So what exactly do we see when we look at the brain of a transgender person? Several studies have shown that transgender brains are both structurally and functionally more similar to their experienced gender identity than their biological sex.
One study found that trans women who, despite being assigned male at birth, had a smaller female-sized structure in the hypothalamus. MRI scans also show the brain structures of trans people to be more similar in thickness to their experienced gender and not their sex. Finally, the pheromone androstenedione causes different hypothalamic responses in male and female brains. And when individuals with gender dysphoria were exposed to it, the hypothalamic response matched their perceived gender rather than their sex. These studies help to highlight how masculinization or feminization of the gonads is not always the same as the brain, and that there's a difference between your sex or your anatomy and your gender or how we perceive our own bodies. There also seems to be a genetic component to transgender identity. Looking at family histories, gender identity incongruence seems to run in the family, meaning they may be inherited. The CYP17 gene, which controls the body's level of sex hormones, has a changed allele that is expressed frequently in trans men. Although more research could be done, scientists are currently looking at over 3 million DNA markers for transgender identity to investigate any genetic link for being trans.
Even though scientific studies validate the experience of transgender people, they're still suffering from more depression and anxiety than the general public. The risk of suicide is more prominent in transgender people who have been rejected by their family, discriminated in the workplace, or in healthcare. Suicide risks seem to decrease after gender transitioning, suggesting that gender dysphoria can cause an extreme amount of emotional pain, even to the point of suicide. If you, a family member, or a friend is suffering from gender dysphoria, there are a few links in the description for more information.
Thank you so much, Gigi, for being part of
Despite the fact that homosexuality is observed in over 1,500 different species in the animal kingdom, there is still a debate amongst the Homo sapiens about whether or not homosexuality is natural. People who think that homosexuality isn't natural think of it as a choice or a lifestyle, that the natural preference is for the opposite sex. Others say that it's not a choice, it's an inherent preference for the same sex, that just like straight people don't choose who they're attracted to, neither do gay people. Science has dug its way into this hot debate. Owing to a few popular studies conducted in the past 20 years, the leading thought is that homosexuality is genetic. It's something you inherit. Although pinpointing a specific gene has been very tricky business. Evolutionarily speaking, gay and lesbian folks are less likely to have children. So how then is it possible for a gene to be passed on to 8% of the population? A new study that came out recently claims to have an answer to this question: epigenetics. Epigenetics refers to a change in how a gene is expressed. The expression is changed not by a change in the DNA sequence, but by other mechanisms, in this case, changing exposure to testosterone in the womb. So to understand this, we ought to back up a little bit. In biology class, you learned that an XX chromosome means that the baby will become a female, and an XY chromosome will develop into a male. But why does XY become a male? Well, because genes on the Y chromosome trigger the release of testosterone, which prompts the development of other male characteristics. Now, during this process, the hormone release is regulated by epimarks, or sex-related genes that are turned on and off to keep male or female development on a steady course, even when hormones are spiking and dipping and all kinds of crazy pregnancy things are happening. This regulation process, called epichanges, controls how masculine or feminine a fetus is. Now, normally epichanges are erased after they're activated. They aren't supposed to be passed on from a parent to a child because they're triggered by the environment. But occasionally, they do pass. And when that child has children of their own, the idea is that child could be gay. Kind of confusing, I know, but basically it's about hormone exposure in the womb that affects sexual preferences in offspring a generation down the line. Now, the study is not conclusive, but it is scientifically significant. We're slowly advancing our understanding of homosexuality, a great evolutionary question. It's also socially significant because one of the main arguments used to justify discrimination against LGBT folks is that they're choosing to be gay, that this is a bad choice, so they deserve to be punished with discriminatory policies. But as this research unravels, we're starting to see that sexual orientation may not actually be a lifestyle choice, that it very well could be an immutable characteristic, something that you can't change, just like your race or your sex. And since we now legally acknowledge that racism and sexism are kind of not okay, maybe society at large can extend that attitude to homophobia as well. In that sense, research like this moves us forward toward a more tolerant and peaceful world. And personally, I kind of get down with that. So guys,
my religion says that being gay, bi, trans, lesbian is a sin.
Your religion also says that having sex during your period is a sin. How come you ignore that? Your religion also says that eating bacon is a sin. How come you ignore that? Your religion also says eating lobster is a sin. Cutting the sides of your hair is a sin. Wearing clothes made out of mixed fabrics is a sin. Getting a tattoo is a sin. A man trimming the edges of his beard is a sin. It says a woman is not to hold any position of authority and is to be quiet. That if a woman is not a virgin on her wedding night, she is to be stoned to death. And that planting 2 different kinds of seeds in the same field is a sin. But that's too hard for you, so you've decided that God didn't mean any of that, he only meant the being gay part. Listen, if you're going to spread hatred towards others by quoting the Bible at them, make sure that you first follow the entire thing, or shut the entire fuck up.
The internet is so great, isn't it? Connecting the world, allowing us to stalk our exes that we miss, giving us memes, bringing us closer to Beyonce. But imagine being so salty that you use the internet to target people and spread hate. Take this chick, for example. I'm sick and tired of this gross gay people. Like, stop. Marriage is for men and women. Disgraceful beep. What's next? Go see a doctor, you beep. Now, beyond the spelling mistakes, I see an angry person behind a screen that needs help. So let's help them in real life. Therapy's in session. So, tell me what's on your mind.
Gay people bother me.
Is it because they dress better than you?
Because they're destroying the planet.
Uh-huh, interesting. I thought that was plastic bottles. Silly me. What makes you say that?
Look, it was Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve.
Oh, I see what you did there, Dr. Seuss. Very nice. Adam, Eve, Steve, very nice. Here's the thing though, I fail to see the relevance because it's also Ellen and Portia, not Ellen and Michael. Oh, but that didn't rhyme. Is that okay? Do you still get it?
Look, they're going against God.
Really? And how does it feel to get updates from God? Yeah, does God text you or is God more of a DM person?
I just know what God intended.
And when your friend God texts you a meme, are you all like, oh my God?
It's a sin.
Ooh, or when you say, God damn it, does God ever reply like, I can't, I'm busy? Oh, wow, you're so religiously woke.
Marriage has always been between a man and a woman.
And voting used to only be between a white man and the government. Things changed.
But that's not why marriage was created.
And that's not why the eggplant emoji was created, but if you look at your last text,
that's different,
said one of your eyebrows to the other. Why exactly does gay marriage bother you so much when it doesn't affect you at all? Are you bored? Do you have a job? Do you hang with anyone besides Alexa?
Because I need to protect the institution of marriage.
Wow, how Ned Stark of you. Can you explain how you are protecting marriage by forbidding people who are genuinely in love from getting married?
They're not in love, they're confused and sick.
Wow, and you want to help them. You're basically doctors without borders, except with one border. Your mind. I don't get it. If you want to protect marriage, why don't you protest against divorce? I mean, I don't think that's a good idea, but I'm just really trying to understand your obsession.
I am not obsessed, you little.
You know, swearing really makes your point more valid.
You are such you little.
Oh, that's good, okay? Yeah, I'm really hearing you now. Maybe try swearing in caps lock.
All you need to shut up.
Really smart stuff. Do you feel better?
You this make me sick to my stomach.
Here, for your little upset tum-tum. Don't let the rainbows bite.
You know, gay couples can't even bear children.
Oh, okay, really? Well, neither can infertile women and guys with low sperm count. Why aren't you being a Twitter gangster against them?
If everyone was gay, there would be no humanity.
And if everyone was a potato, there would be no humanity. But everyone is not a potato, just as everyone is not gay, young grasshopper. Also, there's about 153 million orphans in the world right now. Might be good to adopt. Them, not you. You'd be a horrible parent.
Okay, but gay couples will raise gay kids.
Oh, right. Yeah, you mean like how a whole bunch of straight parents raise gay kids. Is that what you meant? Or did you mean something else? Or
Stop bullying me. I am entitled to my own opinion. This isn't fair.
I am so sorry that you are a victim of bullying. That combined with your awful grammar must be very hard. But your opinion and similar ideas contribute to actual laws being made against gay people. So if you have an opinion about pineapple on pizza, I don't care. But it's illegal to be gay in some countries. Imagine if the government took away your right to be yourself. However would you douchebag about?
It's just unnatural.
So are your boobs, eyelashes, and highlights. You don't get to decide what's natural, contour queen.
Typical leftist.
Oh no, sweetheart, this isn't a left or right thing. It's more so a right or wrong thing.
Are you saying I'm wrong for being homophobic?
No, I don't really like the term homophobic. It implies that you have some sort of phobia, whereas I think you're just a jerk.
Oh, I'm sorry, were you talking? I was busy tweeting.
Here's what I think the problem is. You feel entitled to such an extent that you think you can dictate people's lives. You and everyone else that's gonna leave a hate comment underneath this video. To prove your point, you pick pieces of ancient text and ignore facts and figures from today. People with human compassion, critical thinking skills, and at least one hobby to fill their time don't really care if two men are dating. They're too busy doing things. And I know it's scary, but if you opened your mind half as much as you opened your mouth, we'd all be in a better place.
You're wrong.
I'd like to prescribe you with a bottle of common sense. Okay, please take 2 tablets daily while listening to Sam Smith. Side effects may include minding your own damn business.
It sounds complicated. Should we, maybe discuss it over dinner?